The desert highway was a ribbon of black glass, stretching endlessly between ghost towns and graves no one marked. Asphalt shimmered under the moon's pale light, the kind of light that bleaches the world of warmth and leaves only the bones. Wind carried dust across the empty lanes, sifting against rusting guardrails, and the skeletal remains of signage whose letters had long been peeled away by time. It was the kind of night when the horizon itself felt hollow, as if the sky were only a paper-thin skin hiding something darker beneath. The truck stop rose from the wasteland like the corpse of a giant. The canopy where fuel once pumped hung at a tilt, its fluorescent bulbs dead or broken, a few still swinging faintly in the wind. An old diesel pump lay toppled in the dirt, its hose curling like a severed vein. The main building squatted low against the wind, its plate glass shattered inward, a yawning black mouth where the door had once been. Out here, there was no traffic, no passing witness, only the unbroken expanse of desert night. The air tasted of rust and something older, something feral that lingered in the walls not far off. Beyond the reach of the fractured neon that still sputtered red against the dark, there was movement. It was subtle at first, a shadow sliding across the wreckage like a fragment of the night deciding to detach itself. Then came the sound, a low, ragged rasp that could have been breathing, or the scrape of claws over concrete. The stillness after was worse. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. It had been running for miles. The trail it left behind was marked not by scent alone, but by the rhythm of its wounds. Blood had darkened the dust in uneven splashes, each one a heartbeat closer to the thing that hunted it. In the moonlight, its form was barely visible, a bent silhouette moving with the awkward gait of something both exhausted and dangerous. Its shoulders rose and fell too fast, fur matted against a ribcage that strained with each breath. Every few steps, it paused to listen, ears pricking at sounds too distant for human senses, then moved again with the urgency of one who knows the predator is already in range. Inside the shell of the truck stop, the air was heavier. Stale coffee still clung to the shadows, mingled with the metallic tang of blood. The creature ducked under the collapsed frame of a doorway, its eyes catching the moonlight and throwing it back in a muted amber glow. Its breath steamed faintly in the chill air, a predator's breath, but tonight it was not the one doing the hunting. Muscles coiled beneath its hide, ready to spring or tear, but tremors betrayed the weakness creeping in. Every moment it stood still was another moment lost. It knew the odds, though knowledge meant nothing in the face of inevitability. The night stretched taut, silence straining against the weight of things moving unseen. Somewhere out beyond the dead gas pumps, something answered the moon, not with the howl of a beast, but with the steady crunch of boots over gravel. The sound came slow, deliberate, never breaking pace. Silver glinted once in the dark before vanishing behind the wall of shadow. The creature turned its head toward the sound, lips pulling back over broken teeth. A low growl caught deep in its chest. The moon hung directly overhead now, bleeding pale fire across the cracked asphalt. Out here, under its light, nothing could hide for long. The smell of the place clung to its lungs like smoke. Beneath the rot of oil and mildew, there was another scent, faint, acrid, metallic, that brought its hackles up and kept them rigid. Somewhere in the concrete bones of this ruin, that smell was moving. It knew the rhythm of prey and predator, and this was neither. This was something that waited, patient and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world to close the distance dotted in here before. Not this exact truck stop, but the type. A liminal place, halfway between nowhere and nothing, where the lights die early and the shadows last until morning. These were the places it could pass unseen, rest long enough to heal, listen to the hum of the moon, and let the beast fade back into the marrow. Tonight, there would be no healing. The change was still close to the surface, the second skin clinging in patches beneath torn flesh. Each movement carried the echo of what it had been minutes ago, the fight that drove it here, the chase that hadn't stopped since. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled and died, just a burst of static before it was swallowed by silence. That sound did not belong here. Nothing in this building had power. No human hand had touched the breaker in years. The ember in its eyes dimmed for the briefest moment as its ears shifted forward, listening past the sigh of the wind. A whisper rolled through the rafters, almost nothing, almost memory, but sharp enough to cut into its mind. Every howl is a name forgotten. It patted deeper into the diner section, claws clicking lightly over tile, weaving between overturned stools and booths split at the seams. The vinyl beneath its paws was slick. It didn't need to look to know why. Blood was older than the dust around it, baked dark and hard by years of heat. Something had been hunted here before. The walls were layered with graffiti, most of it meaningless, except for one. A simple crescent gouged into the plaster. Above the counter, the cut edges blackened by flame. It knew that mark. The old packs had burned it into the trees to ward off territory, to say this ground was claimed. But here it was, indoors, where it had no right to be. It had seen that crescent before, but never burned inside four walls. Long ago, when the packs still hunted together, there were whispers of a hunter's talisman shaped the same way, an artifact that drank moonlight and gave it back as poison. The elders called it the Crescent of Ash, and swore it had ended more alphas than silver ever could. That memory returned now, sharp and unwelcome, like a wound pressed with salt. In the stillness, the weight of memory pressed against its skull. The face of a younger one, eyes wide and mouth still human, just before the moon took them completely. That same look now flashed in its mind like a wound being reopened. The beast beneath its skin stirred, not from hunger, but from something colder. Loss. It shook its head once, hard enough to make the light fracture across its gaze. Out on the highway, the boots had stopped moving. That silence was worse than the sound. It meant they were waiting. It meant they had already closed a net. Its breath deepened, nostrils flaring as it moved toward the kitchen door. The air there was fresher, not by much, but enough to taste the world beyond the walls. It needed to see the distance it had left. The moonlight hit the floor in a pale strip where the back door hung half open. The light didn't reach far enough to show the desert beyond, but it was enough to make the silver glint again. This time at the very edge of the frame. It stepped back into the dark, forcing its own breath to slow, forcing its pulse into the rhythm of the hunt it didn't choose, but now had to finish. The air changed first. It thinned, as if something vast had drawn breath and was holding it, waiting for the perfect moment to exhale. The werewolf felt it in the marrow before it heard anything, a pressure in the skull, a heat in the gut. That old instinct whispered the truth. They were inside the perimeter now. The hunters. A faint scrape carried from the far end of the building. Metal on tile, so soft it could have been the building settling. But then it came again, closer, slower, boots again. Not just one pair, two, maybe three. They moved with the patience of predators who already knew where the prey was hiding. No rushed footfalls, no wasted noise. Every sound was measured, meant to herd, not chase. The werewolf slid lower, back pressed against a wall, one clawed hand touching the floor for balance. The wound in its side throbbed in time with its heartbeat, leaking warmth that trickled down to the tile. Its breath came in long silent pulls, taking in the air for anything that would tell it which direction to bolt. The scents came in sharp fragments: oil, leather, steel, the faint acrid burn of silver powder. Then something colder, a note of old blood, not human, carried faint on the draft from the door. A whisper rose again from the rafters, threading through the dark like smoke. Every howl is a name forgotten. The beast's eyes narrowed, not in confusion but in recognition. It had heard those words before, years ago, when the old pack was still whole. The memory of it brought a sudden flicker of teeth, half snarl, half grief. Somewhere in the hallway, a hunter dragged something over the ground. The sound was heavy, unyielding, chains, The air shifted again, and the werewolf realized too late. The real tactic, they were flooding the building with scent. Not just human, but bait. The smell of another of its kind, faint but fresh, carried on rags soaked in blood. It was meant to pull it from cover. The glow of the moon hit its eyes as it moved. A pale smear of light from the broken windows cutting through the gloom. Its limbs were trembling now, but not from weakness alone. The second skin beneath its flesh was pressing closer to the surface, claws twitching, bones aching with the urge to shift fully. It resisted. If the change came too soon, the pain would slow it down. A boot scuffed somewhere too close. It felt the vibration through the floor more than it heard it. It turned toward the sound, every muscle coiled. The hunters knew what they were doing, but so did it. And you, yes you, if you've seen something like this, you know how the scent of fear can carry farther than sound. They hunt the unsubscribed first. So if you're still here, click before the next full moon finds you. The dark swallowed the thought, leaving only the beat of its pulse in its ears and the low, steady hum of the change beginning in its bones. The hunger was coming, not for food, not even for blood, but for the chance to break the trap before it closed. The first crack came from within. A deep, wet pop in the shoulder, followed by the grinding slide of bone against bone. The werewolf's body bowed with the pressure, claws digging into the tile to keep them collapsing. Fur burst in uneven patches along its arms and spine, slick with sweat and blood. The scent of its own change filled the air raw, animal musk that rolled through the corridors like a warning to anything foolish enough to get closer. The hunters didn't stop. They knew what was happening, and they wanted it. The sound of the chains grew sharper now, each link clinking with deliberate rhythm, closing in from both sides. The silver dust was next, fine particles drifting on a current only they could control, catching the moonlight in a haze that shimmered and burned in the lungs. It moved, low and fast, weaving between the counter and the shattered booths. Every breath was fire now, every muscle screaming under the strain of the shift. One eye had gone fully amber, the other still human enough to show the panic. The hybrid state was the worst, stronger than human, weaker than full beast, mind splintered between instinct and strategy. A shadow appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. The glint of a visor, the black outline of a drawn bow. The arrow tip gleamed wet, and the scent confirmed it poisoned silver. It lunged, but the figure moved back, drawing it deeper into the trap. The floor there had been slickened with something. It slid for half a second, then caught itself, claws raking deep grooves in the tile from the shadows ahead. Another hunter stepped into view, this one holding something worse than silver. A crescent of dark metal etched with burning glyphs, each one alive with red light. The werewolf froze mid-step, its breath rattling in its chest, every nerve ending screaming at it to back away. Those symbols were older than the hunters, older than the packs. They could strip the beast from the bones, leave only the hollow shell behind. It snarled, but the sound faltered halfway, caught between rage and the sharp stab of betrayal. Behind the crescent bearer, another figure moved, familiar, too familiar. The gait, the scent, the way they held their weapon. One of its own, not pack anymore, not for years. The last time it had seen that face, it was still human, still promising they'd never turn on each other. Now they stood with the hunters, the breath caught in its throat, not from the dust or the shift, but from the weight of the moment. The truth was a wound that cut deeper than any silver blade. It wasn't just fighting for survival, it was fighting someone who already knew every trick, every blind spot, every way to bring it down. This tale was passed on by survivors. Subscribe if you want to hear the next one. It roared then, the sound tearing from both throat and chest, shattering the stale air. The hybrid form surged forward, claws flashing, eyes wild, the glow from the glyphs burning in its vision. The hunters closed in from every angle, the trap snapping shut with the precision of those who had hunted its kind for generations. The line between predator and prey collapsed, and all that was left was the curse made flesh. The moon broke free of the cloud bank like a blade sliding from its sheath, flooding the truck stop in pale, merciless light. It struck the werewolf's half-changed frame and finished what pain and fury had started. Bones shifted in a frenzy, ribs expanding until the skin split to make way for muscle that corded and thickened with impossible speed. Fingers tore themselves into claws, nails blackening and curling like hooked blades. The scream that rose from its throat warped mid-breath into a howl so deep it shook the walls. The hunters faltered for a heartbeat, just one, but it was enough. The beast lunged, no longer hybrid, no longer caught between forms. This was the second skin in full, the ancient one, the thing that had run beneath blood moons long before man thought to name it. Its fur bristled dark against the white light, eyes burning with molten amber shot through with red. Every movement carried the weight of the curse. It hit the first hunter like a storm surge, claws ripping through leather and flesh, sending the body crashing into the counter in a tangle of limbs and silver gear. Chains rattled somewhere to its left and it spun, jaws snapping, catching metal mid-swing. Sparks flew as the links broke, the ends whipping back into the masked face that held them. The glyph bearer moved forward, holding that crescent high. The red light from the etchings pulsed now, answering the blood moon overhead. Every step closer made the beast's muscles spasm, trying to force it to kneel. But it fought it, inch by inch, dragging itself through the pull of symbols that screamed against its skin. The air stank of burning fur and something older, the smell of magic eating bone. Then the truth came, sharp and clear, sliding into place like a long-buried memory. The glyphs weren't meant to kill. They were meant to break the pact that bound the Alpha to the blood moon, to strip away the power it could draw from the night. And tonight, without that power, silver alone would finish the job. The hunters had chosen their moment well. The moon was high, the pull at its strongest. The binding would be permanent if the crescent touched its chest before the moon passed its zenith. It lunged anyway, closing the distance, claws aimed for the heart of the one holding the glyph. At the last instant, another figure intercepted its betrayer. The clash was brutal, claws against blade, each strike drawing blood from both sides. They fought like those who had once fought together, every movement countered with a memory of how the other would move. Somewhere outside, a cold wind rose, whistling through the broken windows, scattering silver dust into a swirling haze. The blood moon's light caught it, making the air glow as if the whole room were submerged in red fire. The battle moved through it, silhouettes slashing, lunging, breaking apart, and crashing together again. The choice was there, sharp and final. Flee into the desert, or end it here, knowing the moon would never be this high again. It chose the latter, the blood in its veins singing with the ancient hunger that had outlived centuries of hunters and packs. The red moon hung above them, silent witness to a fight that felt less like combat, and more like the fulfillment of something written long before either side was born. Silence fell like ash after the last blow. The air inside the truck stop hung thick with dust, smoke, and the copper weight of blood. The moon still burned through the shattered roof, but its light no longer felt sharp. It was colder now, like it had watched the violence and withdrawn, leaving the ruin to its own aftermath. The bodies of the hunters lay scattered across the diner floor, some still twitching in reflex, others already still. The glyph crescent lay shattered near the counter, its red etchings guttering out like dying coals. The scent of burned fur still lingered, woven with the acrid ghost of silver. The werewolf stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, steam rising from its coat. Deep cuts marked its flanks, some silver burn, refusing to close. Blood dripped from one claw in a slow, rhythmic fall, each drop striking the tile with a sound that seemed far too loud in the silence. It looked toward the back door, where the desert waited under the dimming moon. The open night a promise of escape. It should have gone. Every instinct screamed to vanish before the survivors regrouped, but it didn't move. Its gaze drifted to the far corner where the betrayer lay against the wall, breathing shallow but alive. Their eyes met across the space, Something unspoken passing between them, not forgiveness, not rage, but the shared knowledge that neither could undo what had been done. Beyond the broken windows, the wind had shifted. It carried the scent of something else on the move, far off but coming closer. Not hunters, not human. Something heavier, older, that made the hair along its spine lift in a slow ripple. Beneath the metallic tang of blood and silver, another scent coiled up from the desert floor, damp earth where no rain had fallen, and the faint rot of something buried too long. It remembered it from the old hunting grounds far to the north, where the elders spoke of the hollow tree. If that scent was here, then so was what waited beneath it. The desert was full of eyes tonight. Had stepped toward the door, limping slightly, the weight of its wounds heavy now that the adrenaline had drained away. Each step left a dark mark on the dusty tile, the trail leading into the night like a signature only the right eyes would read. It paused at the threshold, turning its head back toward the silent ruin, the betrayer, and the scattered dead. For a moment, it seemed to listen, not for pursuit, but for something else. In the shadows above the booths, the whisper returned, low and almost tender. He still waits beneath the hollow tree. The werewolf's gaze sharpened, and then it was gone into the desert, swallowed by the black horizon. Inside, the truck stop settled into stillness once more, as if nothing had happened. But the marks in the walls, the blood on the floor, and the broken crescent said otherwise. This was no longer a place of abandonment. It was a place marked, claimed, and remembered. The desert holds its breath long after the fight is done. Out here, silence is never empty. It is a presence that watches, weighing you, waiting for the moment you forget it's there. The truck stop has gone still, but the night has not. Tracks lead away from the building, each one pressed deep into the cooling earth, each one carrying the scent of blood and moonlight. Something else will follow them. Out here, nothing stays alone for long. The moon drifts lower, but it keeps its gaze fixed on the place where the last stand was made, as if committing every shadow and stain to memory. The wind carries whispers along the asphalt, the kind that slip into your ears without touching the air. They say those who walked away from that fight won't walk far. The desert is patient. The blood moon always comes again. If you're still here, listening, you've already felt it, the pull in the chest, the prickle along the back of your neck. That's how it starts. One story, one scent, one moment you can't explain. Then the dreams follow, and when you wake, you find yourself looking for movement where there should be none. You're watching the dark, and the dark is watching back. Think you're just hearing a story. But this isn't entertainment, it's a bloodline archive. Join the pack. Subscribe. Somewhere beyond your walls, claws find earth, and a howl rises to answer the one you can't remember hearing. You might tell yourself it's just the wind. You might believe it until you see eyes staring through the glass and realize they remember your scent. It's not over. It never is. The next full moon is already climbing the sky, and whether you mean to or not, you've stepped into its light. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them, and trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.